Shopify is the world-leading e-commerce platform. As of 2024, Shopify powers 5.6 million active stores across more than 175 countries. These stores generated nearly $100 billion in GMV during the last quarter of 2024. And today, I have the pleasure of welcoming very special guests to our podcast studio, Lukas, Senior Account Executive from Shopify, and David, founder of Sounds Good Agency, and probably the most influential Czech Shopify evangelist in Czech Republic. Is it correct?
I try.
Okay. We've been hearing a lot about Shopify in Czech Republic in recent months, quarters, maybe years. But I still think that the first impression is that Shopify is just for small merchants. Is it correct?
Well, it might be correct actually, but this is like the first question that we usually get in the European markets, like Shopify is for small ones. Shopify is a box. The box is not really working for us. And honestly speaking, before we discover what the requirements are, it might be a box, but afterwards, usually it is not. And what we're usually referring to is like Shopify is the box without the borders. So it gives everything that you need. But also like it is like a question of what is actually needed in order to build like on top. So I wouldn't say like the statement itself is correct like that. And I would say like there's definitely room for like changing that.
What is your perception, David?
I think that here in the Czech market, we try very much to categorize each solution to make it easier to judge. You know, like we all try to put labels on different things in life. And for a long time, there was custom or box, platform, krabice, whatever you want to call it. And Shopify came here with something that is not quite in any of these like categories, you know, because on one aspect, it is a platform, there is a core, but there is a bunch of microservices you can attach to it. You can basically it's much more closer to a Lego that you don't have to do every single piece by yourself. The Lego is already built, but you can build on top of it. And if there's some part you don't like, you can actually switch it around a little bit.
So there's several tiers of Shopify. You are mostly focused on promoting the plus ones.
Exactly.
How does it differ from the basic ones?
Like usually our tiering system is built on like what features do you need in what stage of the business, and like the normal Shopify ones, usually I aim for like you need to quickly start a business, like you're a small store and you really want to kind of get into the market with your e-commerce platform that allows you to like run it big and also scale it. But then on the other hand, we have like seen that bigger merchants, large enterprises, they have different needs. They need more like custom integrations. They have like their need for more scalability. Internationalization is a big element. And this is then where Shopify Plus came into the equation, because Shopify Plus is specifically built for them, meaning you have you have nearly no limits when it comes to internationalization. Integrations are quicker. You have like a support team that is actually helping you in all the steps, not just from the beginning and the consultation phase, but also like with launching and also after the launch. And you have the chances of like adjusting checkouts, like working with B2B, like using the retail in like multiple locations in multiple countries. So this is where I would say like the biggest difference lies. And oftentimes it comes also down to commercial aspects, because Plus at a certain size, usually we say between 2 and 3 million euros or US dollars, is the cheapest plan when you are on Shopify, because that's like how the SaaS game is usually working.
So if I have 2 or 3 million revenues per year, I should go for Plus. Is there any like top limit where Shopify cannot fulfill my needs?
Well, I wouldn't say like when it comes to the revenue size, because we're supporting merchants from 100,000 euros a year to, I think the biggest ones are doing more than 2 billion euros a year. So we have like a big range from, let's say, relatively small entry level to we are definitely enterprises. What really is important is to check, where do I differentiate? Where do I see my business value be created? And why do I say that? Like many merchants come to us and say, we are not unique in the sense that we sell. We are unique in the way of like how we create our products, how we do like research, how we like buy products. And when this process of like differentiating is not the online shop only, then Shopify is like a really good choice. And then, of course, part of the process is to evaluate for each individual merchant. So instead of saying it fits for everyone, what we usually try to do is like go into meetings, understand the requirements, work with partners like David locally in order to understand, okay, this is what is required. This is what comes out of the box. This is what we can do out of the box. And this is where a custom solution might be needed on top of it to fulfill like the criteria of the merchants.
David, based on your experience with the implementation of eShops on Shopify in both Czech Republic and abroad, what is typically the number one reason why clients choose to go for Plus?
For the majority of the cases, when they are considering Plus, they already have a running business and they already got burned on some previous platform. Maybe a different type of box, maybe even a custom solution, or anything in the middle that you might consider. And usually the pain points are the speed of innovation. Anything you want to do takes 6+ months or it's super expensive, or the fact that you want to go to a different market and just like create a separate version of your store. It's a huge effort. And we were just like in a meeting today with Shopify guys with a potential interesting company, I would say, without going into too much detail. And they were saying how painful for them was just to integrate Klarna. It's like a project for 6 months and it's like blocking their growth. And in Shopify, those things are the easiest ones to do. You know, so people that are like tired of trying to become a technological company and actually want to focus on the customer experience, on the products, on the growth of their business, on their marketing, and they don't want to get limited by everything that goes behind that. You know, that was actually the vision of Shopify from the early beginnings. It was to democratize it, to make the barriers go down. So you don't have to actually be a techie or a tech company to be able to give your products or offer your products to the markets.
We've been talking about Shopify Plus, but there's also Shopify Components. I'm not sure that it's very well known in the Czech market. So can you introduce us, please, briefly?
Yeah, sure. So we had like Shopify, which was like for the entry level. Then we had Shopify Plus, which is like for large and enterprises. But then we also have Shopify Components, which is, let's say, you have a big enterprise business that is very complex, very custom, but you only want individual parts of the Shopify stack within your system. The most common one is the checkout. Like Shopify's checkout is like based on studies and based on analysis, like the best performing checkout in the world. And just the checkout process alone, if you want to implement that rather than like the rest, how your storefront is built, how your backend is built, but simply the checkout, this is then something where Shopify Components comes into play. Usually it is used by merchants $200 million plus, $300 million plus. So the core market is most of the times Plus, and most of the times Shopify Plus is also like the product that works best for them. But in these individual cases, Shopify Components can be something, and maybe to make it a bit more grabbable. On Running was, for instance, doing something like that. Like they started on Components and then used the checkout. And now when you go to the On Running store, you clearly see, okay, this is the Shopify checkout. So there's a lot of movement in this market, but Shopify Plus is still like the main focus.
May I ask here, is there a minimum barrier of entry in terms of GMV to be able to access Shopify Components? Because I can imagine that even in Czech market, much smaller companies like 15 million plus per year would be happy to take certain parts of the ecosystem. But I don't think that's possible from what I heard.
Usually it's a tricky one because, I mean, Shopify as a platform is so strong because the entire platform is kind of like integrated with itself. And implementing Shopify Components as a one part without the rest of a platform is complex. And most of the time so complex that for the smaller / medium-sized companies, it doesn't make much sense because they would get more with the entire Shopify offering rather than just a component.
So how many companies are using Shopify Components globally?
I think I don't know the actual number.
Well, Shopify was born in Canada. What are the main barriers for the European companies to work with it? Because this one of the other myths, let's say, which we encounter, that people think that it's just for the US market and that it's not suitable for the European players.
I think this statement was true like 5 or maybe 6 years ago, because Shopify was grown or like started in Canada, like in the English speaking countries. And then like at some point in Canada and the US, it was like really like the tool, the one choice, the default vendor. And then they started to like go to Europe. And in Europe, the most natural way was like go to UKI. So, United Kingdom and Ireland, because it's English speaking. You can use the same material. You can use the same marketing, campaign structures. And you didn't need to adjust a lot. But then like 4 years ago, and that's also when I joined Shopify, there was a shift where Shopify tried to enter the first non-English speaking country, which in this case was Germany. It's quite a big country in Europe. And they understood that like just translating content from English to German is not cutting it, because as every one of us knows, a translation is not transferring like the feeling, like their let's say the localization aspects that are really needed. So what Shopify tried to do here is like to put people on the ground, local people who speak the language, then talk to the customers, get the feedback, put that back to Canada, and then like let Canada figure out how to grow the teams locally even further, so that now, like 4 years later, we have like entirely regional hub in Europe. We are a strong region, the fastest growing region in the world for Shopify, which is something that is, I think, super important for like every European merchant who's considering, is Shopify something for the future, or is Europe a key market for the future? And when it comes to difficulties like this localization, I mean, in Europe, we have not just 2 countries like Canada and US, we have like 30 countries plus, and every one of them speaks like different language, different currencies, different payment providers, different shipping providers, different tools, different local players. So there's a lot of, let's say, unique elements that play into this equation. And Shopify is now trying step by step to conquer each of them, which I think is like the main one.
Would you say that today Shopify in Germany is as localized as it's in US? Or there are still some barriers to be overcome?
I think there's like still like Shopify publishes like the Shopify editions, usually twice a year. And you still see some functionalities that are US only. I'm thinking like about Shopify Audiences, which is like a marketing tool specifically for Plus merchants, but only available in the US because of certain GDPR questions. So you still have, let's say, a few things that are only available in US or Canada. But when it comes to the core platform, so what is really needed for a majority of commerce, then we are having nearly parity when it comes to functionality. And this year, and this is something that is important, just see the change log of Shopify in the last 2 weeks, how much changed in the markets. Like we publish now features for Europe first, not for America first, like Shopify payments in Hungary, in Croatia, in Estonia, and so on and so on. So the list is like, the list is growing and growing. And also the entire multi-entity topic that will like become more important this year comes from Europe, because US didn't have these issues. But in Europe, big companies, they have 5, 6, 7 entities. And for them, it's like, how do I manage this complexity in the easiest setup possible? So yeah, I think we're getting there.
Yeah, like what I like to mention here, what is very interesting for me is the fact that Europe, powered by DACH in the beginning, is becoming such a relevant growth factor for Shopify. Being a publicly traded company, of course, it has to look at the numbers. That makes sense. And I've seen it over the last like 4 or 5 years, how even some market-specific features came first to France and to Germany, to obey the specific laws that those countries have. And now we see the push, like 4 or 5 new countries in Europe that have Shopify payments, of course. And the thing is, we are getting closer and closer to get part of the R&D budget of Shopify allocated to the needs of our country, including Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and so on. And this is super important because, as I've heard multiple times today, like when we were chatting, is that Shopify indeed invests everything they can into the product. It's a product-different company, founded by a developer, founded by a product-first type of person. And last year was 1.7 billion that you guys put in just improving the product, refactoring, adding new features. And a bigger slice of this budget is being allocated for the specific needs of the European market, Central European market, specifically for us, to Czech Republic.
From your perspective of implementator, would you call Shopify ready for the Czech market?
I've been saying that for the last 8 years. So now I can say with even more certainty, like definitely like building what we are building now in certain of our projects would be much more painful 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago for sure. And some projects we did back in the day were feasible. And nowadays we'll do it for much lower implementation costs, So even the first pioneers that bet on Shopify Plus here, they took a chance, and it was worthwhile chance because it gets easier and easier for them to maintain. And that's the thing, like people have sometimes the fear that going to Shopify, they'll be locked. And if Shopify goes in a different direction, they are kind of screwed. But from my personal experience, it just gets easier and easier. There is a new challenge, but there is a new functionality, there is a new feature, and there is a new way of implementing the same thing. If I may give a very specific example of one of our current implementations, I'm not going to say which one. We were able to implement a loyalty program with a very cheap application plugin, $5-10 per month just to have the data structure. And all the logic of how it works, how people are compensated, is done with the native Shopify flow, which is basically a tool for automation. So if this happens, if A happens, then B happens, then C happens, then D happens. And this is something that we could do almost with low code, no code approach. And 6 years ago, it would be impossible. And that's one example. Is not Europe specific, but it shows the speed of innovation that Shopify has that makes it easier and easier to work with the tool. Which, of course, for agencies, it's a risk because maybe we'll be useless in the future, but for merchants is the best.
Are there some features you are currently missing for Shopify to be even more localized? Something you can try to push in their roadmap,
100%. Yeah, we already talked about it today. Two things that I believe would be game changers that will make Shopify acquisition much easier. And I know that Shopify, to a certain extent, is working on it. One is the possibility for non-Plus customers to have the pickup options, zasilkovna, paketup, and so on, in the checkout and not after or before. That will make the customer experience much, much easier. And then something that I know technically is possible for Shopify is to allow specific Central European countries to change the order of the data you're collecting on the checkout. Because here in Czech Republic, we are used to first choose shipping, then payment, then you have my information. In Shopify, it starts with the information first, which has a bunch of advantages as well, which I can very well argue against why that it should be that way. But if the Czech people have the option to say, I want the standard traditional way we are used to, it will make it much easier to acquire new Shopify merchants.
When you're talking with local players, do they see these obstacles? Or like the value Shopify brings is just that big that they do not care much about these, let's say, details?
I think like they, like when you look at it from that perspective, some of them see the obstacles, but some of them also see like opportunities here to maybe change existing flows. Because what we oftentimes see is that you have a process that is running for 10 years and you have never challenged that specific process for 10 years. Like if it's good or bad is like out of the equation, but you never questioned it. And no matter what system comes, you try to push this exact process into the system. And what you actually do is like you bend the system around your needs rather than looking like where my processes can maybe bend in order to fit into a system. And the outcome of that is like custom complexity, because every process that you adjust, because let's say you are unique, you feel like you're unique, this is adding like bottlenecks in the future, midterm. And therefore, this like objection comes the same as like Shopify is for small merchants, Shopify is a box you cannot integrate. But most of the times when you then dive one level deeper, you should ask like, okay, what makes you unique? Where do you see the limitations? And why is it a limitation? Like, what is the actual business impact for your customers? Then sometimes there's like a blank, like there's no answer. There's like, well, we just did it this way the last 10 years. So, and we want to continue to do it the same way. And, as we learned at Shopify, challenge the status quo, or challenging the status quo is what is needed in order to grow. And also challenging the status quo is something that sparks new ideas, like it challenges and it creates new opportunities. So despite the fact that we hear objections, I think we're so far still always able to find some kind of solution, and quite happy with that.
Does it mean that migration to Shopify is more difficult than migrating to custom solution? Because you not only have to change the technology, but you have to change the mindset and be open to changing the processes?
Well, you might say it on paper, but when you look in the reality, we see the opposite. Mm-hmm. Like implementation costs usually, and let's take the German example, migration from let's say Shopware 5 to Shopify oftentimes ends up to be cheaper than a migration from Shopware 5 to Shopware 6, mm-hmm. or from Shopware 5 to Magento or any other e-commerce system there. Why? Because Shopify tries to aim for this 80-20 approach. And I mean, Pareto principle is quite known, but Shopify is like living that to the core, meaning if we can deliver 80% of the features out of the box without you having to custom made it, and that includes APIs, payment providers, shipping providers, then this is stuff that you can migrate without having to think about it. If the data structure is identical, you can use in the easiest way, an Excel sheet, CSV, format the top, and then import it, and you have your products in. And I was last year working with a bike merchant in the German market, and the bike merchants are specific in the sense that, well, unique in the sense that they have a lot of products, a lot of SKUs, a lot of custom attributes for these products, and you want to link certain products with the main product in order to make the upselling and cross-selling work. And they, with no agency, like, were able to import, like, I think it was 200,000 products into Shopify within 3 days, and like with own like tutorials online, what you can do. So I think the barrier to enter Shopify is lower than other systems because of the standardization approach, because you don't need to do everything custom. And we're coming back to this, where do you differentiate yourself? If you differentiate yourself with, like, let's say, a great product, well, you are happy when the payment provider, Klarna, PayPal, credit cards, they're available. You press a button, you can activate them and they work. So I would say, like, the entry barrier is lower with Shopify. And this is also what we see in projects.
Okay, but sometimes you need to customize. And yes. I would say that one of the other myths around Shopify is that it's not customizable, or that the customizations are limited. Are they? And I know what you are going to say, because you're a sales guy from Shopify. But David, you are still selling Shopify, but from your practical experience, how is it with customization? Yeah, are there some things which you just cannot bend, no matter how hard you try?
Yeah. Checkout, as going back to what we were saying before, is one of the things, because checkout is the bell of the ball for Shopify. Is the core, is the most important technology they have. And of course, there is a bunch of security implications and so on. So all the customization there has to be done quite carefully. And Shopify is getting better and better at allowing to extend, but you cannot change the nature of how the checkout works, for example. What we usually happens is there is a customization. We say at first glance, it's not possible to do that very specific edge case on Shopify, but we do what you're saying. We challenge them, what you actually want to achieve. And usually, like 80% of the cases, we say, okay, there is a much simpler way how to do it with Shopify existing technology. So we've built things on Shopify that I would say at first glance are impossible or non-consistent with Shopify development. But because the technology is so open, the APIs are so well documented, you actually can build almost anything on Shopify. At the same time, going back to the 80-20, the companies that believe that technology is their differentiator, that the fact they have 200 engineers in-house actually is what makes their like more competitive, those should bet in custom solutions if they really believe that, you know. And of course, some of those companies, I believe that that's not their real USP. But if they are in that mindset that they think, no, we don't want to standardize processes, we want to create our custom processes that fit our specific market and needs, then Shopify might not be the best fit.
Your perspective, Lukas?
I think like the customization aspect is always like, you can break it into certain parts. Shopify's checkout is by far the most, let's say, limited factor. And why is that? Because we try to run like multiple A/B tests with their big customer base. I mean, globally, we are talking about like, it always differs the number, but between 3 and 4 million shops using Shopify. So you have 3 to 4 million shops that use Shopify's checkout as well. And these 3 to 4 million shops have again like customers on their own. So when you scale that up, it's a big number of people that actually every day do the transactions via Shopify. And in the checkout, when you run A/B tests, what you need is like, you need a stable checkout that works if you have 10,000 people there, or if you have 5 people there. You need to have your payment providers integrated so that the payment information gets sent to them and there's like a response. And you need to have your shipping providers in the checkout. And all of these elements, Shopify really aims to like keep as stable as possible while also maintaining compliance with PCI Express, et cetera, So you might always, or some people might feel like, yeah, but I would like to add a field or change a field or remove a field. And adding fields, especially with Shopify Plus, is totally fine. Like the most use case that we see in Europe, we have this EU reverse charge for B2B companies. I want a customer to enter my VAT number in the checkout, and then based on their location, based on the VAT number, I want to have a check. And if the check is valid and it's a valid number, please deduct the tax or not. These are cases which Shopify can provide and also like out of the box provide. So when it comes to checkout, this is many times not like a big issue. And also custom-wise when it comes to like how you show visual elements, you're really capable of adjusting it. The question is always, do you want that, or you want to have the best performing checkout? Because there in this step, you want the customer to purchase, to not think again about the decision, but to press the button and say, this is it. When it comes to other limitations of the platform, then it becomes already harder, because the checkout is like the main piece. In the front end, I would argue that there's no limitations where a customer, or we have met customers in the past that haven't been able to fulfill their front end requirements with Shopify. Because first of all, you can do the liquid language with Shopify, which is quite strong, and the developers push it even further. But if that is not enough, you go headless, and then like the world is open. When it comes to the backend, you have like most modern APIs with GraphQL and a REST API that are, first of all, well documented, and second of all, capable of, again, like for big merchants. So even there, like adding systems like SAP, ERP, or Salesforce as a CRM is nothing that we haven't seen already. So I think like checkout is, when you really want to break it down, like the biggest thing where you have some limitations, but we try to keep them there for a good reason.
Yeah. If I may say, I think a couple of years ago, the customization was the biggest question on why to choose Shopify or not. If you have all the customizations, if you can do all the customizations you can. I think my thought process has been evolving on that. And also after meeting a bunch of potential clients that wanted Shopify or something else. And I think nowadays it's more of the mindset of what type of tooling they prefer to use, I would say. And also there's a lot of a commercial aspect in terms of the licenses of Shopify, and also about if they are ready to go to a SaaS-based solution, because most of the biggest defenders of custom or in-premises solution also go from a security perspective, which is very challengeable as well. But some companies are still living in a certain stage of their development, and they're just not ready to make that jump yet.
And maybe if I can add here, because David mentioned a very important point, there's one more hard limitation that Shopify has. And this is the hosting part. If you are a customer or a prospect that says, I want to host myself, I need to host myself for whatever reasons, then Shopify is not the solution for you. Because since the beginning, we are focusing on the cloud aspect to benefit from all the aspects that come with that. Software updates, like updates through the cloud always being available, scale it up, scale it down, but usually scale it up. So if hosting is something that you don't want to give out of your hand, then Shopify is not the right fit. This is like a hard limitation. If this is not the case, then we're always open to discuss the specific requirements, but oftentimes we find like a solution for this.
What are the most complex projects you've seen on Shopify? By the amount of customization.
It's a very good one. Actually, yesterday my colleague Maurice and I went through the numbers. In the last 4 years, we supported approximately 180 migration projects. So it was kind of like a big one, and only plus projects here. So that's also important, to say. I think like the most complex ones that I encountered were, usually where the product configuration part was a difficult one. So I was working with a company that is, creating like configurable computers or laptops. And you don't just say, this is my main board, this is my storage, and this is it. But there are dependencies when you choose a certain product. So you choose mainboard 1, and then you get not chosen like a different, or you cannot select a different version below. And there was approximately 1 million possibilities in this specific product configurator that someone needed to map, make a verification check that you really don't build a configuration that will not work in the end. And it was like also a combination with NetSuite as an ERP in the background. So the ERP was feeding some information, but the business logic was living within Shopify. And the configurator itself was like built with a third-party tool that was using the APIs from Shopify to like nicely represent it and also be quick. So this, I think, was one of the, let's say, more complex projects. But oftentimes we see like that they're non-fancy stuff, like ERP integration. This is then where complexity comes in. So, because companies not necessarily have mapped all of the processes. What data do I want to manage in the ERP? What data do I want to manage in the store? When should the orders be synchronized? When should the customers be synchronized? Like when all of these things are not really, let's say, 100% clear, then usually within the projects you see these complexities, and then you need to think again, and need to think again, and need to think again. So yeah, this is, I think, the main ones. Another one that might be interesting is that there was like a solar company, big one, selling solar panels, and usually a solar panel is nothing that you send via post. So they had like these 20 to 30 stack solar panels that they needed to ship with their like a specific shipping company. And what they did is like they wanted for each zip code in Germany, and depending on the weight and depending on the selection of their product, a different shipping price, because it needed to be in real time calculated in order to improve the margin. I mean, B2B businesses, small margins, you need to make sure where to get it. And this was, for instance, the case where we used Shopify API in order to build the logic above, and then in the storefront just rendered what the price would be, which really helped the customer, and it sounded complex, but it was a project where like this thinking process of how to solve it was the longest part, and the actual implementation part took like 5 days. Mm-hmm. So these are like I would say like the main ones, but every customer has always like some specific complexities and some specific things that can be challenging. So
yeah, that's funny, because I was going through my catalog of adventures of complex implementations, and the cool thing is that the hardest ones were the ones we did the longest ago, and if we would rebuild them today, it would be much easier. That's something fascinating. Like, for example, in terms of shipping rules, if you have a huge variety or range of products from very big to very small, you have different categories of calculation of shipping per sortiment. Then you say that you have 3 warehouses that ship to different locations depending on whatever rules, and you have to make all of this work. And I remember that with one merchant, we were able to build it with very little code by using one of those plugins that was interacting directly with the shipping API. So we just had to, most of it we just clicked and play with the rules, with the logic. And then when things got complex, we just did some Ruby scripts on top of it. And something that we would custom code would take 3-6 months. It was done within a month, So that was a very interesting challenge. And today shipping is already way more evolved than it was back in the day. And then the other example that I always like to refer is like something that is not e-commerce or pure e-commerce. It's related also with retail. We had a merchant which had tablets for their shoppers or shopper assistants in the stores, and they had to specifically log in the front end of the eShop, and they were able to log in with their employee ID from SAP, from SAP. And based on that, they will see a completely different front end with much more information that they would have like as a normal customer. For example, what is the cost of this specific product on a competitor's website and stuff like that. And then depending on the sales they would make during the day, they would get compensation for their monthly bonus. And the cool thing is, even if they wouldn't make the sale at the moment, they would just send them an email with the products they visit together during the day. And the person would click on that link at home. Within a window of 30 days, they would still get compensated from that purchase, which is the omni-channel approach, which once again, we built it at a moment where Shopify was not that ready as it is today for that. And it worked fantastically.
So mainly I see Shopify as a great fit for D2C brands. But based on what we are speaking, I see that even omnichannel players or B2Bs are good customers for you.
And that's true. Like, what we've seen in the past is like that Shopify started with D2C. So it was like, you want to start your store, you want to start it quick, you go there. I would say like perfected that way. And we're also very strong in the D2C world. So give you an example, in many countries in the Western world. So let's say America, Canada, UK, even like Germany, France now, and also like the Netherlands, etc. In these countries, Shopify is the default question, the default vendor, meaning the question changed from why should I consider Shopify in the migration to why shouldn't I do it with Shopify, which is a quite big distinction and also like a difference. When it comes to like the development, then like retail became a thing. So when I started in 2021 at Shopify, I was literally like the first guy locally in Germany to bring the POS solution to people. So you started to have like this D2C channel that many customers were already using. And then retail apparently became a thing. And at that point of time, we called it like omni-channel approach. So the customer goes into the store, buys with the Shopify POS. The customer data gets synced to Shopify because it's one system. And then in the online channel, you could technically use that to show what they purchased the last time online or offline. What you could use like marketing campaigns in order to target these customers again, loyalty programs, etc. All of that was like more unified, but still it felt a bit of like a gap. And then like B2B came into the equation, and then it became like a unified commerce approach where Shopify is not just a platform for D2C and not just a platform for retail, but Shopify's aim is to be the commerce platform, meaning no matter what commerce you do, if it's retail, if it's D2C, if it's B2C, so your marketplace business, or if it's B2B, you can do that on Shopify. And just as a small remark, especially in the B2B product in the last 2 years, there was a lot of movement. We closed and we won merchants, like for instance, Carrier in the US, B2B merchant that wouldn't have considered us 5 or 6 years ago because we were simply not there. And now we're seeing again, even like in the B2B world, a shift towards why not with Shopify? Why not with Shopify? So
should I, as a CEO of agency which does custom solutions, be afraid? And what can I possibly do besides acquiring Shopify agency?
It's a very good question. And I think it comes down to the mentality and the mindset of the business you're dealing with. Because if you have a business that works in a very traditional way, and also some of the processes they don't want to give out of their hand, cloud is a question. We are not quite sure if we want to do it in the cloud. We are not quite sure about this, let's say, API approach or only API approach. We want to have full control over everything, like the database, the hosting, the functionalities. We have the team and we want to have full flexibility. Then custom solution most likely is a potential solution in this case. If I say like, I would like to not be a tech company, but I actually would like to be a company that, like is selling, a commerce company, and then use the tech that someone else built for me in order to, let's say, grow my business, then I think Shopify is a very good fit. And this is something where testing it, checking out what are the requirements, again, like where do you see the differentiator in your business, can be the differentiator between Shopify or custom. And of course, I would say like we see a lot of migrations from custom systems to Shopify for always a similar reason: high complexity, high costs. So it's, I think, more of a question of what do I want to achieve and where do I see my business in 5 years? Do I see myself with a custom complex solution, or do I see myself more into this 80-20, let's say, level where a company is focused on the commerce part? Then I would be concerned, but there's still, like, I think, customers and also certain needs that would work best with a custom solution.
Yeah, I already had this tough conversation yesterday at dinner. I asked Morris, so is Shopsys dead? Is that what you guys coming here to announce to us, or what? You know, and there will always be a space for custom. We've been synced as well in Shopsys. The hunger for custom solution is getting lower and lower. But we also see the deals we are making on the custom solution side, and it makes 100% sense for them. And it's the best, even economically speaking, for a certain level of customers and for a certain level of requirements, mindset, tradition, and stakeholders in the business. So I wouldn't be so afraid being in your position, but I'm overall glad that Shopify is going to take over in different types and segments here in the market.
Okay. Let's take a look at Shopify in Europe. You already said it, you started with UK and Ireland and then Germany. How did you conquer Germany? What was the go-to-market strategy, and did you already win the market?
Well, I think like we should move a word from conquering to something else, because like current times might make it a bit difficult. But I think how did we grow our market share in Germany, and how did we become, let's say, a vendor of choice in more and more evaluation processes? First of all, we localized. So we really have the teams there. We have marketing resources there. We have event teams there, partnership teams, like a big partnership, let's say, environment, because this is where you can scale as a platform the most. Like invest in your partners, help them to like understand the systems and to make complex cases, help to make them money, because then they will like return it in most of the cases. So that is how we were able to, let's say, spread the arms from 2 or 3 arms to 1,000 arms, because the partners themselves had like incentive to go for Shopify in their tech stack. The next one is that we actually had a very similar situation in Germany, like we, for instance, now have in Czech Republic. In Germany, when we started in 2021, we had many local systems. Apparently, Germany is like a hub for many e-commerce platforms like Shopware, Spryker, even like commerce tools. And Shopware was like the number one local system, very strong, allows you a lot of flexibility. It was very strong also with Shopware 5 at that point of time. And we had always the question of like, why shouldn't I go with the system that works for my country, like that works for my requirements? And the main reason was, yeah, you want to internationalize, you want to grow, you want to like focus on something that is maybe a bit quicker than the overall development, then Shopify might be a good solution. And it started slowly, so we won the first cases. We won more and more cases. And now in 2025, that we're already in, we're winning merchants like Westwing or On Running in the DACH region, which are not just an enterprise, but they are like big enterprises at a scale that we haven't thought before. And it was a combination of localization, a combination of big partnership efforts. And this is the third point that we already kind of like discussed in the beginning. We fed the feedback from the ground to the teams and the product teams, especially in Canada, and told them, listen, guys, if you want to be successful in this region, in Germany, in Czech, in Hungary, in Poland, in whatever country you imagine, then you need to listen to the people on the ground, and you need to incentivize partners, technology partners in the region to build for Shopify. Because in the end, the best system in a region doesn't work if the payment provider of choice is not available. The best system in the world doesn't help you if the shipping provider is not available and the products don't get to the customers. And last statement here, or point, we managed to create like this pull market where Shopify came in and new tool providers, technology tool providers start building for Shopify first, because there is enough stores. And if they build for Shopify first, you always have a first mover advantage because you get the newest technologies, the newest help. So again, like focus on growth. And this is, I think, where Shopify really was strong and is getting stronger. And this is also now spreading across other countries in Europe that are not English speaking.
Yeah, to comment on that, it's funny because as we, for the last 8 years, have been organically trying to grow here a Shopify share in the market, we actually had to do the same things without you guys at the time, of like not just getting the same cases, getting the word of mouth, getting all these success stories, but we also had to help those apps and those partners and those payment gateways to be in the system. And we saw every time that we implement a new Czech-specific service, being GoPay, Comgate. Now we did the app for Fox Deli, for example. And every time we do this, there is an uptick on Shopify growth here.
So it's a big part of a business. And also it shows Shopify is focused on Europe. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. Europe is our fastest growing region. And it's fast growing because we are like not just acquiring existing merchants or upselling them or providing better services, but we're actually acquiring new merchants from platforms like PrestaShop, Shopware, Magento, Custom Solutions, and so on and so on. So yeah.
So when we are going to expect the first Shopify office here?
That's one of my next questions, actually.
Yeah. The office.
Yeah, in Czech Republic.
I know that you are remote first,
exactly.
So maybe office no, but the team,
Exactly. I think it's a good one. So Shopify is a remote first company in this sense. So I don't see us having an office where like people actually go and work from. And it's also hard to say like when is the first Czech speaking person on the ground. Sometimes it gets quicker than you think. But what we definitely see is that people like Maurice and I, when they come to Czech, there is the attention on the market. Like there's questions like, hey, how is that going? What is the sentiment in the market and how can we help the market? So I think also important for the listeners, in the next few months, you think you will see a lot of events, a lot of stuff happening in the Czech, but not just in the Czech, like also the neighboring countries, community, where Shopify really tries to bring in value, to show what can be changed, and maybe to facilitate business talk between like-minded people, because I think this is where then the value is really created. And yeah.
Okay. Why focus on Czech Republic? What about the other European markets?
Well, like the first market was Germany. Then I think after Germany, we had a strong presence also in the Netherlands and the Nordics. Mm-hmm. After that, France came as like a very big country, and also Italy, then Spain, Portugal. So I would say like in majority of countries, we already have established ourselves and like growing quickly. And most of the times then there's the look of like, what is the next prospective country that can bring the most value? And Czech Republic is perfectly in there, like in the center of like their Central European countries. It's a big economy. You have a lot of businesses here. So there's also a lot of entrepreneurship in the country. And that's why Shopify said, listen, this looks like a great opportunity. Let's evaluate how great the opportunity is, and let's see what we can make out of it.
What was the result of the evaluation of how big the opportunity is?
Well, seems like quite big. When it comes to like overall numbers, I mean, of course, they fluctuate a lot, and of course, it depends on what data you look at. But take ShopTet as an example, like local system, very strong, has ties to payment providers, to like everything that you would need for the Czech and Slovak countries. And I think the last number was between 45 to 50,000 stores, like plus minus, like I think we're getting also some market share there. Shopify grew now to approximately 4,500 stores in the Czech Republic. Mm-hmm. So this is just like the store size. And when you look at like 5 years ago, I think it was 100, 200 stores. So we're talking exponential growth. And when you, then you see the potential, like all of these 45,000 stores are potential Shopify stores in the future. So yeah, that was part of the criteria, I suppose.
May I ask if you can share the cumulated GMV of those 4,500 stores?
I think it's a good question. We get that often. I cannot really disclose like one combined number, but I can say we're talking billions of Czech kronas.
We did our own estimations, so after recording we can compare how far we were.
Sounds good.
So currently you said it's like about 4,000 to 5,000 e-shops in the Czech Republic, which is about 10% of the market. Where do you see your market share in 2, 3, 5 years?
Well, ideally, like when we look at the current curve, we would like to double it. So at least end up with 8,000. It's important to say that, like, of course, a lot of resources come into like the plus merchants, the larger brands, which is less than this 4,000 or 5,000 currently in Czech. Because what we have seen in other markets is if you can convince the largest, most complex merchants in the region to use Shopify, to grow with Shopify, and to, let's say, power your commerce with Shopify, then let's say the smaller merchants have an incentive. They say, listen, if this brand can do it, why shouldn't I be able to do it with Shopify? So it's like this very strong pull effect. And that's why a lot of resources are spent also to focus on the most complex cases. Because, and this is an important thing for the listeners, Shopify doesn't develop single features for single merchants. So even if the biggest merchant, let's say an Adidas or someone else, would come and say, listen, we want Shopify, but we want this and this and this, Shopify would not create or develop this one feature only for this merchant, but it's always this community approach, meaning if we develop something for the largest enterprise merchant, then we make it available for every merchant, or at least every plus merchant in this sense. So everyone is benefiting from acquiring bigger and bigger and bigger customers.
How many of those 4,000 or 5,000 e-shops in Czech Republic are on Shopify Plus?
Well, good question. I would refer here like to the global average. So usually, I mean, you mentioned the number in the beginning, like I think 4 to 5 million stores globally use Shopify. Statistically, you can say between 1 and 5% of them are on the plus range or on the plus plan. Some countries higher share, some countries a bit of a lower share, but between 1 and 5 is like the range that.
So something about 100 stores in Czech Republic.
Well, based on the numbers, it could be something like that.
Okay, you are very good in avoiding numbers you cannot share. Good job.
Trying.
When I was checking your LinkedIn profile, I've seen that basically every quarter you exceeded all the sales goals you had, and you were like super successful Shopify salesman. Does it sell itself?
Well, it seems like, right? No, but I think like what you clearly can see is the big, strong momentum. Like being successful in a company is like the one thing, and also like trying to do the extra work. But you need to have a good product, and you need to have also momentum of the market. Because if you have this, like if you are like doing a good job on the one hand, and you have the momentum and you have the strong product, then you can, I think, usually exceed the targets quite well. And Shopify has that. Like, I mean, I joined in 2021, and since then it was a roller coaster. I've seen many roles. I've seen many jobs. I've met like a lot of brilliant people within the teams, but also talked to thousands of customers in different, let's say, industries. And what became clear is that every one of them has the same goal. And the same goal is like make their customers happy. And if we follow that approach as well, like make our customers happy, then you have like a positive cycle. Because Shopify makes commerce better for everyone. And we literally mean for everyone. This money then that is generated by that is going again into the product. And then the product can again make Shopify better for everyone. So the cycle, or let's say flying wheel that we are looking at is really something that I have experienced in the last 4 years very strongly. It is not just a saying, a slogan that is on the wall and no one lifts it, but everyone that you meet at Shopify lives according to that specific ones. That's why, despite the fact that I had like personal success as well, this was not possible without like the great team around it.
Okay. What is the number one reason why the bigger companies, let's say 10, 20 million plus, choose Shopify?
I think it's, if I would have to choose like one reason that we hear in, let's say 8 out of 10 conversations, then the first one is like, I'm so flexible that I'm not flexible. Meaning the level of complexity is so big that despite the fact that my platform in general is like fully flexible, I can do whatever I want, people or customers don't have the resources in order to do so. And what then happens is usually like this, as soon as the growth stops, the growth of the business stops, what you have to do is you need to downsize certain like positions. You downsize, let's say, on a development team, but now you need the developers in order to maintain the platform. So you run into like, again, like a problem, because it's not sustainable to run it on that end, but the complexity just keeps increasing and decreasing. Every custom change you do, every small detail that you changed 5 years ago is now picking up, and therefore like high burden, high maintenance costs, high inflexibility, so to say. This is really why like customers look at Shopify, and the maintenance part can range, but sometimes we hear numbers where you, like in the first call, you say like, how is that possible? Like, how do you pay so much and are still in business?
Is the experience in the Czech market the same?
I would say that we have had that type of conversation. Those are the best potential deals, because they already went through the whole development life cycle of being hyped about whatever solution they had, they got burned there. So then it's very easy for them to make the decision. Since we are very proactively trying to push Shopify, even for those that are not still on the right mindset to it, it's a bit different. People are very often, especially in the last 3-4 years, as we had the situation we had in the market here, a bit of decline and stagnation after COVID and so on, people are not so much looking to the future. They are looking into their spreadsheets and comparing number A with number B. And often they see Shopify license and say, okay, this is much more expensive than what I'm doing right now, license-wise. And they are often not able, if they haven't suffered the problems that here Lucas is mentioning, they don't see all the hidden costs of their current solution. But once they realize it, then it's a very easy upsell.
What is the number one lost reason why you are not winning deals?
I think like the number one reason of losing deals is it's not even losing deals to other competitors, but it's losing deals to no change.
Yeah.
Meaning a company is afraid of doing change, because change management is something that is extremely difficult to manage. You have people that are invested in the systems. You have people who are maybe used to certain processes. All of these people or sometimes all of these people are afraid, like, what happens if we make this big change? Does my role become obsolete in the new setup? How can I like bring value in the new setup? So this, I think, is the number one reason why customers actually don't do the change. Not necessarily like other competitors or like the licensing model, etc., but really like, I'm afraid of doing a decision right now, and then they postpone it. And some of them come back like half a year later, 1 year later, the situation didn't really increase. Usually it gets more like challenging in the current setup. And then when, let's say, it's already fire there, they start thinking about it more intensely. But yeah, like this is the number one objection or number one reason why customers really don't go to Shopify.
Which is quite frustrating, because often you could see from your experience of speaking with so many different merchants that it will only get harder and harder to make the move, even though they are in need of it or will be in need of it in the future.
And if I wanted to know what is the number one reason why they choose another solution?
I think also like it's hard. It's hard to put that into one specific reason. Oftentimes it's like, I have used system in version 1.0, and now I will use the same system in like version 2.0, despite the fact that there's like a whole migration needed for it. Because what did they say in the past? In the past, they said you will never be fired if you change to SAP. It's like you can change to SAP, and if it doesn't work, well, you burn money, but you will never get fired. And the same goes like for other platforms. If you go for the safe bet, or at least on paper, the safe bet, you most likely will not get fired for making a wrong decision here. And this is like this, again, like fear of going in a new direction, maybe in a different direction with Shopify, why we're losing. The license cost is something, or sometimes something that also pops up. But here, and I think David brought it already proper, if I compare Shopify with other systems in the market, especially on-premise systems, so self-hosted or maintained by agencies in many cases, on paper, Shopify seems more expensive. Because if you put like a black pen and write the numbers down, then the license fee might be twice as much as hosting, etc., on the current platform. But when you then look at the total cost of ownership, and this is where we need to shift, like total cost of how long does it take me to develop new features? How much does it cost to develop a new feature? How much does it cost to make like a new software update or like a security update? All of these elements then come into play and come into account. And then when you then again put like this black pen on a piece of paper, but you add not just the license cost, etc., but also what you might be able to save on Shopify compared to the current system, then oftentimes you run into a situation where it's nearly equal. Even in some cases where Shopify is significantly cheaper than the current one, see that a lot, for instance, with Magento. Like Magento is a like very complex, very good system in the, let's say, B2B world, but that requires a lot of maintenance in order to stay like that. And then sometimes the switch to Shopify can cut your costs overall by 50% more.
I know that sometimes the customers aren't happy with the revenue share model because sometimes they don't see like it's the platforms that it's thanks to the platform that they grew.
Yes.
What is your reaction to this kind of objection?
Well, naturally, I can understand it because I would always like, as a person, you think like, okay, why should a platform benefit from whatever marketing campaign I'm doing, whatever I'm like running here, or if I improve my product. On the other hand, and this is something that is important to say, you can focus on these things, like on better products, on great marketing campaigns, on slogans, etc., only if you know that your platform is stable at every time, that you know that your platform works at every time, and that you know that the customers can purchase from you at every time. So when I say every time, we're talking like you have 30,000 checkouts a minute. No problem. Try to do that with like your non-Shopify setup and see what kind of thoughts you have to bring in before. How often does it happen before Black Friday or after Black Friday that we get potential people coming to us and saying like, listen, 2 years I had to suffer through like an outage during Black Friday. The cost of that is lost revenue, not necessarily like the cost of the platform, but lost revenue. I don't want to have that. And this is then where like we argue, if you want to grow the resources that are needed in order to maintain this level of, let's say, satisfaction, security, etc., also need to grow. And a GMV part has one advantage, that both parties, Shopify and the merchants, have the same incentive. We want you to grow, because if your business grows very quick, we grow with you. If your business is not growing at all, for Shopify, it's not an ideal case either, because, well, the revenue share is like either stable or it's not really kicking in. So the idea is we make this 80% out of the platform as best as possible so that you can grow as best as possible. And for this, we take the small share, which under the line is still in many cases cheaper than when you have to build this entire technology yourselves.
And you can see this approach to the R&D after, connected to the point we said before, because it's not just about refactoring, maintaining the tech stack, the hosting, adding new features, but how many times I've seen in the past X years, out of nowhere report, all of your stores right now are 30% faster. We did some optimization. We plug it everywhere. So you're 30% faster. If we all believe that speed is crucial for conversions, everybody's making more money. And that probably was not a simple project of, I know, many hundreds of developers were working on it on Shopify side. But these are the small things that you wake up another day and you have, your shop is better. Even though you did nothing for it, you of course shared the revenue. And in that case, we were able to get there together.
Okay. Was there any fuck up or any case where choosing Shopify was not a good choice? That the project didn't end up well?
I'm pretty much sure that there was like projects where choosing Shopify didn't result in the results that were like planned before. However, I have to say that, and this can happen with every platform, that the requirements need to be like properly fulfilled. And give you an example here. During COVID, we had a phase where online stores, like they jumped, they surged. Everyone needed an online presence because everything was locked down. And we also had customers that said, give me a Plus contract. I want to sign here. I want to sign right now. There was no time for requirements. There was like, we asked like, are you sure? Like, should we check this and this and this? No, I want to do it now. I have made my research. They signed the contract. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. But the risk was that there was no proper requirement check before they actually made the platform choice. And I think this is something that is not just unilateral for Shopify. If you do a migration, and no one likes to do migrations, that's at least what I've learned in the last 4 years, I ask everyone to check properly the vendors, check the requirement lists, build some proof of concepts, work with local agencies, work like with other partners, exchange with people who made that move already. Because then you can avoid certain fuck ups or situations where something doesn't work. Because in all honesty, in every migration, you will find 1 or 2 hiccups in the process. It's not hiccups in many cases that are like not solvable, but it's something that you haven't had the thought about in the beginning, because you migrate this, and then at the last stage you realize, oh, I didn't do like the zero redirects as proper as I wanted them to do, because then the timeline was there and they needed to launch, and like there was stress and time pressure. So my ask is here, like I haven't experienced myself like any big fuck ups or any, let's say, fuck ups that were not like solvable. But what I've experienced is like when you don't do the proper legwork before, that then the risk of entering into this or ending up in a situation that can become a fuck up is definitely bigger.
You are quite dependent on the agencies who are building the software, because you come to the sales meeting, you say that Shopify is the best in the world, the customer buys it, but then your success is dependent on whom they choose as the integrator, right?
I would say yes, not in every case. So we have customers around, like in last year I had this one case, $25 million company, quite complex, but not like complex in the sense that they had 5 different custom solutions they needed to integrate. And for them, the goal was to see how far can they come without having to ask any expert to do a Shopify migration. It was kind of like their own personal motivation of the CEO. And we're talking about the CEO. Like he himself took that project and said, listen, I have 3 people. And with these 3 people, no one of them had like depth knowledge. I want to be able to see how far I can get until I reach point where, okay, now I need a developer. And the fun part is that they were managed to do like a migration of a store. They have like multiple ones, but they started with one in 4 weeks for approximately a budget of like hours of 3,000 or 4,000 euros that they did themselves when you account for their own numbers. And this project was better than the 70 or 80K they spent before for an agency. So there's these cases, but then there's also other cases where you say, listen, I have an existing business I need to manage, and I would like to rely on a proper partner locally because they already bring their experience. For them, it's not the first time I see this button. For them, it's not the first SAP integration or Salesforce integration or anything else, but they have the knowledge. And usually that's why we also rely on local partners. They are able to reduce the risk in the migration process. And, most of the people don't know it, but like Shopify, especially with Shopify Plus, runs in a triangle principle, meaning you have Shopify, the platform provider on the one hand, which is first the pre-sales consultation. So technical assessments, etc., to figure out, is Shopify the platform for my needs? If you answer this with a yes, and let's say you go through all the contractual stuff, then you have a launch consultant from Shopify's side. So this is someone who makes sure that until the launch, you always have someone from Shopify's side who can help, who can answer questions, who works with the agencies. And then after the launch, you're also not just let alone, but then you have a merchant success manager who is again taking care of you and making sure that what you plan to do and what you plan to do in the future is actually working. And we have Shopify, we have the customer who of course is able to put the requirements. And then we have the local agencies who work as implementers, who work as facilitators, who work as accelerators. So make the process quicker because in some projects in migration that can be done in 2 months rather than 4 months when you do it yourself is cheaper in the end than when you do it all yourself, even though you pay the agency a fee. So that's why local agencies are very important, and they are the closest to the customers because they know different projects. They know the market the best. Shopify tries to understand each market and tries to understand each country. But realistically speaking, a team of 10 proper agencies locally is better than a team of 10 people within the market because the agency can exponentially scale, whereas a team of 10 is always bound by the personal restrictions.
Yeah, and you can see that even in the fact that we got these to these 4 to 5K stores, and it was all driven by agencies. So that's a good sign of that.
It's organic growth, especially in bigger, complex projects. It would be hard to say, or it would be wrong to say you don't need an agency. The question is, for what work do you need the agency? Exactly. And there it's a big difference because front end, many of the marketing people that maybe have never seen development code can do themselves. And this empowers them because then the process, first of all, you're closer to the product. You're closer to the new website. When you're closer to the new website, there's not this handover period from the agency. And then it's okay, here's the new system. Here's the onboarding that we have for 1 hour. And then we need to go to the next project. But you already learned during the process. And then it's a smooth transition. So you have a lot of bouncing back or back and forth between them, a lot of exchanges, a lot of communication. And usually also the stronger the community gets in a country, the more they can share, because 80/20 standard means David built your integration for company X. Company Epsilon has exactly the same system. Well, there's a synergy because you apparently can refactor or reuse certain elements of this without building completely from scratch. So the synergy effects is really what we're really aiming for.
Okay, let's take a look at the future. We are now in a very turbulent times, let's say. Things are changing a lot. Where does Shopify see the future of commerce in 2030 or 2050, if you are looking that far?
I think we're already seeing a shift currently, or I would say 2 years ago. 3 years ago, none of us, or at least maybe not none of us, but the minority of people knew about AI bots, AI systems, LLM models, tools to search, AI web search, all of these things. And the same phenomena we had with TikTok. TikTok came out of nowhere, took the market by a storm, and within 6 months had such a huge user base from social media that you questioned okay, I need to have an integration, I need to have a tool, I need to be ready for that. And Shopify was always there to kind of try to be the first. If it comes to YouTube, if it comes to TikTok, Shopify tried to be the first. And what we're now seeing also with AI coming more and more into the equation, Shopify is aiming to be the first. Perplexity, you search for, I don't know, I need a present for my wife for the weekend. because it's our, I don't know, 4th anniversary, 5th anniversary, or 6th anniversary, then you want to have like one answer, and ideally you can buy immediately without having to go through different stores. And I think like the future of commerce is first unified. So the customer is in the center of everything, and then the channels around are simply to cater for him. So the customer wants to buy in a retail store, he wants to buy in an online store, he wants to buy with his smartphone using an AI tool whatsoever. It shouldn't matter. Like it's really like the customer in the middle, and depending on what he wants or she wants, she will get that. And yeah, it's unified. I think it is more focused on AI. So we will see more and more of this. Typical web engines like Google will have more and more difficulties because they're already getting used less. And this was something we haven't expected 3 years ago. We haven't seen. But main goal is no matter where future commerce goes, Shopify is there.
What if the future commerce goes to marketplaces?
Well, then we're also trying to be there. But realistically speaking, from what we've seen now, marketplace business is big, but especially like the majority of stores, not necessarily all Plus stores, but like, or large stores that we would consider a good fit for Plus, but also smaller stores, they become more and more independent. Because first of all, marketplaces have always the one issue of limitation, like you are limited to whatever the marketplace rules, and like the margins are also cut quite heavily. But also you want to have like your own branding. You want to have your own presence in the web. Then a tool like Shopify can be there in order to like.
Within the topic of marketplaces, can you present a bit for the listeners what is the whole Shop Pay kind of marketplace idea? Where are we going with it?
Yeah, like it's a concept that in Europe is like slowly picking up, but it's definitely not yet there where we see it in the US. So maybe for the viewers, Shopify has created its own marketplace, so to say, or app, which is called Shop. And Shop is usually powered by Shop Pay. So this is like Shopify's only or like own express version. So imagine Apple or Google Wallet, but powered by Shopify. And the idea of Shop is that you aggregate the customers who want to be part of it, who install it, and then their products get listed from all these individual, independent 4 million stores into this Shop marketplace, and customers can their customers can actually purchase from there. It is quite heavily used in the US. It's quite heavily used also in UK. In the other countries, it's picking up, but it's not, let's say, at the US level yet. But it kind of like mimics the idea of a marketplace. It mimics the idea of like this quick one press or one click finder and buy and like have the easiest shopping experience that you can imagine. Plus, it is fully owned by Shopify, meaning Shopify is able to like make big changes here and roll it out, and everyone has it if they want to. So a merchant can say, I install this channel because I want to be listed there. For them, it's no additional cost. For them, it's simply like a click of a button, and then you get to the normal checkout, buy it. So that's like Shop Pay.
There have been some rumors in the Czech media that ShopTet is for sale. Do you ever gain your market share by acquisitions?
No, actually, we don't. Usually, Shopify's aim is like to build the best platform, then also like scale it. And so far, we haven't had like acquisitions and like buying local providers, implementing them into the platform, because the question is always, what do you gain from that? Isn't it better to use these resources for, let's say, building specifically or specific products for certain regions? So, yeah, I don't know. I cannot say for certain, but I don't see that happening.
Given your success in Germany, how you managed to gain significant market share? How do you manage to basically win over the hyperlocal platform? Would you say it's a good idea from ShopTet to be on sale, potentially?
Well, let me say it like that, without offending anyone here. Shopware was the number one platform in Germany. They had a strong market share. When you look at the overall numbers, Shopify gained a lot of market share, not just from them, but also from other systems, but also like a large part from them. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see something in other regions like that.
Okay. Guys, I think we could speak about Shopify for hours and hours. But we don't have hours and hours. Is there something you would like to mention at the end, which you would like the listeners to remember?
I think I have one final remark. And I learned that actually like on the trip, like to Czech or to Prague this time. But most important, and also like the most important element that we focus on, that Shopify není krabice. Meaning, if we say that we see ourselves as a box with no borders, and the rest you can imagine yourselves, but like a box without borders, this is like how you can see and approach Shopify. And if you ever question yourself, is there the potential solution? Is it something that might work for us? Please talk to either your local agencies or talk to like local experts, or contact Shopify directly, because then we can go into an evaluation process. And if we figure out it's a good fit, great. And if we say not so much, we're also honest about that.
Okay, so David, I suppose your closing remark is that if someone wants to know something about Shopify, they should contact you.
Correct. They can contact Shopify, but first me.
Okay, guys, thank you very much.